Okay, in this assignment we're going to be looking at contour, but this time we'll be drawing the contour with a Sharpie. The Sharpie will not allow us to erase or to change any of our mistakes, so that's going to be an important part of the assignment. And to make it even more stressful on you, you're not going to be allowed to use any pencil. Okay, so let's talk about how we would do this. So this is an example of a Sharpie drawing of a life model. If you notice this line right here coming down, so to draw that line, you really can't just start and look as you're going. You really have to spend some time looking at the muscles, the bone structure, rib cage, hips, all of this stuff, and then go for it and make your line. So what the Sharpie does is it slows us down. It makes our looking much more careful and much more deliberate. And so that's why I don't want you to use a pencil when you do this drawing. I want you to just trust your line making and go for it. Now, inevitably, there's going to be distortions, exaggerations, things that are going to go wrong. And actually, that is going to be an inherent part of this drawing. So if we look at this drawing, this is a drawing by Picasso, a drawing of a very famous composer named Igor Stravinsky. And again, this is a line drawing without correcting himself. So what happens is you get these distortions. The head is a little distorted, the shoulders and arms are distorted, the fingers are too large. This leg is a different size than this leg. So what happens with this technique is I don't want you to correct yourself. I don't want you to throw it away. I don't want you to start over with a pencil. I want you to just try and go really slowly. And then if you have errors or mistakes, something's too big, something's crooked, something's too small, keep them as part of the drawing. Now, obviously, if it's way, way off and you just can't proceed, I completely understand you want to start over. But try to keep the little distortions as part of your drawing. So another drawing by Picasso, again of Stravinsky. And again, you can see the hands, the size of the hands, and details. You can see he has got some pencil lines under here. But I don't want you to be worried too much about correcting yourself. Your drawing might come out a little bit quirky, and that's related to the blind contour exercise we're also doing this week. But let's not forget, Picasso, even though these drawings are off, this is the guy that painted this painting at the age of 14 or 15. Okay, so he knows what he's doing. He's in full command of his abilities. And so letting things be distorted was a signature quality of his career. And here's another artist, David Hockney, a British artist, picking up on Picasso's style of doing portraits using pen. They didn't have Sharpies back then, I don't imagine. But you get the same idea. There's natural distortions, things that are a little bit off. And again, try not to worry too much about it. And you'll see what I mean as I'll take you through the drawing. So this is what we're going to be working with. It's a still life. It's got a boot and a bottle. It's very complicated. There's lots of things in here. And part of that is the complication. For instance, the laces is actually going to work to your advantage. Okay, so I'll show you what I mean when we look at the drawing. So we start with the drawing. If you pick the hardest thing in the drawing to start with, so let's say you do totally mess something up. You don't want to do that halfway through or at the end. You want to know whether you're miles off at the very, very beginning. So if I go back to this drawing right here, if I make a mistake on the laces in the subsequent drawings, and I do actually, and you can see it, you probably won't notice. If I make a mistake on the leaves or maybe the petals of the flowers, you won't notice. In other words, organic shapes that are very complicated are easy to hide. This, on the other hand, if you make a mistake on the bottle and the neck, it's such a simple, solid, clear geometric form that any mistake is going to stick out like a sore thumb. So naturally, you want to start with this object. And see how you get on. So starting with the bottle, this is the picture of the entire pad. So I want you to see the scale. I don't want you to draw this small. So there's the top of the bottle. So what I've done is I've kind of placed the top of the bottle where I want it in the picture. And this is a rough guide as to where it can be. It can be higher, it can be lower, more to the left or the right, you'll see. But about this big. And then if you'll notice, well, you probably can't, but what I've done is I put little dots in the picture. So this is going to tell me about how far down I want the neck. This is the curve of the shoulders of the bottle. And then from these two dots, I go straight down. And this roughly is going to tell me the bottom of the bottle. And I figured all these out by doing sighting on the picture. I just measure, that's how wide that's going to be. That's how long that's going to be. That's how long that's going to be. If I take this, it's going to be roughly this. And this is about how far down I want to go. So you can make dots on your drawing with your Sharpie. Okay, I just don't want you to rely on central axes with your pencil and ellipses and all of that. I want you to just really try and go for it. And so knock out the bottle as best you can. You can see there's little kind of where the pen meets and touches. There's kind of little you know unperfect joints, so to speak. But we are actually going to go over this in key areas with line weight. Okay, so I'll smooth this out eventually, but this is kind of a rough approximation of where I want the length of the bottle, the width of the bottle, the shoulders. And then I know that I'm not going to continue all the way through here, so this is really important. You got to draw the things in front first. Now I just needed to get my bottle in because that's going to be my guide. But you got to be careful what you're drawing. Don't draw things, I can't finish this bottle because if you remember there's a piece of fruit right here, and I can't erase my Sharpie lines. So you got to be very careful while you're looking at the image what to draw first. Now from here, it makes sense to start building my drawing over here. And here's a little trick I want you to be aware of. When we go back to the picture, you have two ways, well, three ways. You can start drawing these leaves in the boot, or you can switch your vision and look at these empty spaces here. This is called negative space. If you remember back from the very beginning of the course, the FedEx logo, the white arrow was the negative space between the letters E and X. Okay, if you can see that shape, or this shape in here, then if you draw that shape, you've automatically drawn the side of the boot and the edge of the leaf. So these are the shapes I'm talking about, the pink, and they're everywhere. I'm just going to concentrate, on these two right here. So if you can imagine those shapes, see them clearly in your imagination as shapes, and this little triangle here, and this sort of triangular shape there, then literally drawing that shape will space out your objects. So that's what I did in the next one. So I've drawn, this is the shape here, this is the shape here, and the shape above it. Now you'll see pretty quickly they're off. This is not wide enough, this is too small. But again, like I said, it's an inherent part of this drawing that you're going to get some distortions in it, and don't worry too much. So then continuing, again with negative space, but going back and forth between the negative space and the positive space, okay? Some lines you can see, if I don't want them to be too strong, you can make them dotted. So we are going to pull line weight into the drawing in a bit, by putting thicker lines where there's intersections, lines that we want to, or shapes that we want to draw our attention to. But there's also edges and shapes that we don't want to draw our attention to, and we can indicate that by breaking up the line, making a dotted line. So like this here, I literally drew the negative space and then did the bottom of the shoelace. This is going to be another shoelace. And notice I was careful as to which shoelace was in front and on top. So by looking at these spaces, it's a really, really good guide to help you with your drawing. You've kind of doubled the information you have to work with if you can see negative space and positive space. So then moving along, just adding more and more into the picture. And if you compare this to the original, this is too high, this is a little too far over. But see how you don't really notice that. It's convincing. So I'm not changing, I'm not erasing, I'm not pulling things out. There's lots of mistakes in here. This mark isn't there, for instance. So if you can hide them, great. And the best way to hide them is to not call too much attention to them. In other words, leave them in there and don't worry about it too much. You can see some line weight is beginning to develop, some thicker, heavier lines. And then coming along, more details, bringing it over almost to finish, getting the rivets and the shoelaces. And then if you look at the picture, my shoelaces are off. This actually is lower down, and I've made a mistake here. But again, you don't notice that because it's convincing enough. Same with the pictures of Stravinsky and his hands and stuff like that. And it really goes for all art, right? We've talked about this before. Rembrandt's portraits are brilliant, but we don't actually know that the people looked like that. In other words, he could easily have made a mistake, but the eyes were wrong. Those were the wrong lips. The nose was too wide. But it's a convincing image. So that's what I want you to do. That's part of this exercise, is to trust yourself, make a convincing image, and keep going. All right. But most importantly, it's about slowing down and then taking it to completion by putting the reflections in with dotted lines, the shadows, the shadow down here. And just adding more information. You might add this much information. You might add less information. Right. You might decide not to do this on the side, or these details here. So you can leave stuff out. Just don't leave major stuff out. Like you can't leave shoelaces out in a vase and a leaf, but you don't have to put the shadow line in or anything like that. It's entirely up to you how dense and populated you want your final image to be. Okay, so um, go slow, look carefully, trust yourself, and try to keep and not call attention to too many mistakes. Or by using thick lines, you can see how I smooth the bottle out. You can cover things up. So obviously this is a really thick line. You probably notice there is a mistake in there somewhere, but I hid it just by darkening it. And also, you're using your line weight where things touch, where things go behind. This is going behind, that's going behind, that's going behind. And we see it all the way throughout the drawing. This is the leading edge of the leaf, so it's a little darker than the other edges. Okay?